he began to be or not to be. We can't satisfy Keats's curiosity about Shakespeare, but this vignette brings John Keats himself vividly and to posterity voyeuristically to life. He was 23 at the time, and though he didn't know it, had a little less than 2 years to live. Nothing much has surfaced about Shakespeare's day-to-day existence since 1819, even after a further 200 years of increasingly in-depth scholarship. Although the posthumous impact of his works on culture, including electrically on Keats himself, is more recorded and expansive than that of any other English writer, Shakespeare the man remains resolutely disembodied, despite the efforts of his biographers, owing to the lack of surviving contemporary letters and diaries. His context can and has been reconstructed in ever more fascinating detail, but Shakespeare as a subjective individual remains for us a non-entity. He indeed seems the ultimate chameleon poet, as Keats put it, who has no self. Or chameleon poet, Camelion, to quote Keats in his original spelling, which is often quite idiosyncratic, as is his punctuation. We have a lot more detailed time-specific personal information about John Keats. We know, for example, exactly where he was when he wrote to George and Georgiana, by the dull light of a taper and with his back to the fire, at Wentworth Place, the house on the edge of Hampstead Heath, where he was then living as the lodger of his friend Charles Armitage Brown. It's now a museum called Keats House. You can visit it today and see the very fireplace where those dying embers clicked. These days, Keats House sits on a street renamed Keats Grove, in which the other houses are now prestigious properties, affordable only by international bankers, from which most 20-something writers in the London area would be priced out. It's a world away economically from that of the insecure Regency middle class to which Keats and his friends belonged, though the instability they lived through was not that far away from the experience of today's urban millennials. In 1819, Keats House was a pretty but modest suburban new build, finished less than 3 years before he moved in, and architecturally a bit of a cheat. From the front, it looked like a symmetrically proportioned single villa, with a central front door and windows either side, like a child's drawing of what a house should look like. But the facade hid the fact that it was designed on the inside to house 2 small independent semi-detached dwellings, divided by a party wall, each with its own individual staircase, a symptom of the way in which Regency taste often had more to do with aspirational appearance than reality. In the later 19th century, the house was remodelled. The front door used by Brown and Keats, which was round the side, no longer exists, nor does their staircase. But the rooms where they lived, each had a study on the raised ground floor and a bedroom above, are the same. In the case of Keats's works, in contrast to those of Shakespeare, there are instances where testimony has survived to tell us something about the actual physical moment of composition. Most famously, his Ode to a Nightingale was said by Charles Brown to have been written one spring morning in 1819. According to Brown's later recollections, Keats took a chair out into the garden after breakfast to sit on the grass under a plum tree, where a nightingale had built a nest. He came back into the house a couple of hours later with some scraps of paper, which he then proceeded, in Brown's account, to try to hide by thrusting them behind some books. In Brown's Memoir of Keats, written more than a decade after the poet died, although not published until 1937, this becomes a parable of romantic unworldliness, of a Keats supremely uninterested in anything beyond the moment of inspiration. As Brown depicts it, it is he, Brown, who rescues the scribbled sheets, 4 or 5 in number, and gets them into shape. A job of work, he tells us, as the writing was not well legible. Happily, as Brown puts it, with his, Keats's, assistance I succeeded. Thus I rescued that ode. It's hard not to suspect that it was Brown's prying eyes that Keats was trying to circumvent when he thrust the papers behind the books, if that is indeed what happened. He was certainly not shy about publishing the ode.